Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Alright, what's the strangest thing that's ever happened to anyone?
I swear I had a few strange encounters where I used to live with drivers, but none of it ever resulted in anything. This is all before I heard about gang stalking, and I still think it's fake 95% of the time. Be going home. White car following me. Like I'm actually making strange turns and going to my house in a very strange manner, and they're following me still. Drive past the house and go around the block. They stopped following me about halfway into me driving in a big circle around the block. Hear them yell something. Never see any faces or anyone I recognize. Definitely didn't know the car. See them drive by my house 15 minutes after I go back to it. WTF.jpg. Be homeless. Sleep in the car in front of an old house because it's a quiet street. Also, tell myself my dad abandoned me there, so it's where I belong. Sad.jpg. Only backstory I'll give is that my dad moved for a woman and left me to be homeless. 4 a.m. Wake up. Headlights pointing into the car. Thinking, oh great, cops are here. Nope. Car swerves to the other side of the road. Almost hits the fence across the street. Swerves back. Almost hits the curb on my side of the street. LOL WTF. Drunk guy is swerving all over the road at like 8 miles per hour. Parks at a shithouse at the end of the street. Just LOL and go to sleep. Next night. He fucking does it again. I think he does it every night, bros.
Live in an apartment building. Leave the elevator on my floor to get home. Oh, it is my neighbor. Hello, Mr. Smith. He just stands very close to his door with his back turned to me. Complete silence. He doesn't even move. Alrighty then. Start opening my door when suddenly my neighbor yells nervously. You could at least say hello. Hello, I did. You probably didn't hear it. Later, after 5 minutes, go to take out the trash. Hear somebody behind my door. Look into the peephole. It is my neighbor. He just stands there with his fist clenched. Mr. Smith? He just goes back to his apartment. Otherwise, I have never seen him behave weirdly.
Lots of strange things in my life, but this may be the only one witnessed by another person. A few years ago, I lived in a large apartment by myself. I would sometimes wake up and feel something walking on my bed. Sometimes it felt like a small, four-legged creature like a cat, and sometimes two-legged like a toddler. The steps would usually start at the foot of the bed, and then would slowly and casually move up to somewhere between my knees and waist before stopping. At first, I wasn't frightened by it. I assumed there was some rational explanation. My previous roommate had cats who would sometimes sleep on my bed, so I thought maybe I was somehow remembering the sensation of them walking on the bed. But I was usually completely awake when it happened. My mattress was pretty old, so I also thought it might be the springs changing shape or something. But it was odd that it always happened in the same pattern, and only at night. As it happened more frequently, I began to suspect that something else was going on, but I still wasn't afraid. Usually when it happened, I felt like whatever it was friendly and innocent. If it startled me, I would sometimes say out loud, "I'm tired, please let me rest." And it would stop. I mentioned it to my girlfriend once, and she was stunned. She said she had felt the same thing when sleeping in my bed before, along with other creepy paranormal things. One night we were sleeping together, and we both woke to the footsteps at the same time. I looked down at the bed, and I thought I could see the actual indentations on the blanket where each step took place. We were both wide awake and talking to each other while it was still happening. Like, "Did you feel that?" It creeped the hell out of my GF. She is very sensitive to paranormal stuff and said she felt a tingle in her arm that she normally gets from encountering supernatural situations.
About 10 years ago, in the middle of nowhere, in the Kettle River Range, Northeast Washington State. My buddy and I were pretty big hikers at the time and often did trails within a day's drive of Spokane. It became a thing where at the turnaround, we'd always try to guess what time we'd get back to the car, and honestly, we would sometimes get within 5 minutes or less on trails that were around 7 miles or so. Rule was we never checked our watch during the return portion of the hike. On this particular day, we were in the middle of nowhere, and because of some patchy snow along the way, we realized we were the first ones of the spring to do this hike. We made it to our turnaround point quickly, as this was a very short hike, 2 miles, and sat down and chatted for maybe 10 minutes. However, it was sort of foggy, and the payoff view from the hike wasn't visible, so we didn't stay as long as normal. At one point, we were sort of jogging back down the trail. Not normal, but I don't remember why. My friend said, "That's weird." His pocket knife that was clipped in his pocket was gone. I figured it was probably because of the jogging, and sure enough, it was laying not too far back up the trail, found in under 5 minutes. My friend was sort of rattled, as apparently when it's clipped, it doesn't just slide off. In any case, we get back to the car, and it's over 2 hours later than we predicted. And that's even worse when you think about it being such a short hike. We tried to figure out how we lost those 2 hours the entire drive home, even double-checking call logs to confirm start time. I absolutely have no idea what happened.
I'm the third generation of Irish immigrants. My nana brought lots of stories over from the Isle, specifically the family Banshee. In Irish law, each family has its own Banshee that warns of a death or tragedy. Be me. Be about 5, maybe 7. Live in a small town just outside of the Bronx. Has to be about 2 a.m. The entire house is woken up by this ungodly screeching. Legitimately pissed myself. I don't remember too much because I was a kid, but I remember it being so horrific that our dog tried to hide under the bed. Entire house is in a panic, and my nana, who was bedridden at that point, just keeps screaming in Gaelic. I never learned the language, but she was terrified. Screaming carried on for about 5 minutes. Constant blood-curdling screech. Then it just stops. Family tries to go back to sleep. I remember hiding under the bed with the dog for the night. A week after that, my nana passed in her sleep. She was already suffering from memory issues. She had a seizure that night. I actually saw the thing years later, when I was 12.
What did it look like?
You want the full story? B12. Late September. Older sister had just gotten married. Asked me to watch her home. The whole family lived next to each other between 3 small houses. I had to walk her dog back and forth between our house and hers. It's sundown. I'm walking her dog up towards my house. From the street, you can look into the small garden my mother kept below her window. I see a feminine figure dressed in black in the garden. I call out, thinking it's my mother or aunt or one of my other sisters. The figure turns around, my face when I don't recognize the face, my face when there is no face. Instant feeling of fear and dread. I'm frozen as I stare at the gaping black hole where a face should be. Hear the screeching again. Dear Lord, my ears hurt just writing this out. Drop the dog leash and book it down the street to my sister's. Dog follows. I almost lock him out. Poor bastard was pissing himself. I ended up staying at her house, hiding in the shower for hours until I got up the balls to make a mad dash for my house. Week later, my mother died of cardiac arrest. TLDR. The Banshee was feminine, dressed in all black, and had no face, and it warned of the death of my mother.
My friends and I ran over an extraterrestrial with a truck outside of an old abandoned asylum in rural Maryland about 20 years ago. We saw it. We freaked out, my friend panicked and hit the gas. We felt the truck hit it and jolted as we proceeded to run the thing over. We stopped, got out to investigate, but there was nobody there. There was a dent on the front of the truck where we made contact and what looked to be blood. When we couldn't find the body, we lost our shit and got the hell out of there. Never went back to that place again.
I have a few that I've been wanting to share for a while. Story 1. Be the late 90s. I stood outside my work smoking a cigarette. It was a very foggy day. So foggy it was hard to see into the parking lot. Super slow day. Maybe because of the weather. I see a figure at the far side of the parking lot. Low-key looked like Jesus floating towards me. As the figure starts to sharpen up through the fog, I see it's a homeless man. He's still like 50 yards away. He's walking straight towards me, like making a beeline to me. There are no other stores, a reason he would be walking right at me. I realize he's probably walking up to me to ask for a cigarette. Normally I'd tell him to fuck off, but I'm feeling generous. He did look like Jesus a minute ago. He walks right up to me, like 1 foot from my face. His exact words, "You're an A person. Try to be a B person." Then he made like a thumbs up sign. He took his thumb and turned it to its side, and then pressed his thumb against my forehead. I almost jumped back because I didn't want a dirty homeless man to touch me, but I was comforted for some reason. He pivoted directions and walked off into the fog. Never asked for a cigarette. Story 2. Be in a new city. Be at Target looking for shit for the apartment. Get distracted by something on the shelf. A belt, maybe? On the other side of the shelf, I hear, "Hey, Anon." Dude said my name. I look up. A dude in a fedora and trench coat, like the man version of Carmen Sandiego. I can barely see his face. He says, "I guess this will have to wait for another time," and he just books it to the front door. We were in the very back corner of the store, and I watched him run full speed, knocking people's carts out of the way and taking off out the front door. I immediately felt like this was connected to other events in my life. I can't explain why or how, but I got that feeling right away.
Most of my early childhood creepy moments can be explained via sleep paralysis. However, I think the feeling of dread that I experienced as a kid, quite often before something really terrible was about to happen, still weirds me out. Let me give an example. I'm Dutch, but I guess you could translate this to being in 8th grade. Class is going over stranger danger. I remember it being a page in some kind of book we had. In the book, there's a picture of a man standing in front of a gray car, black hair, glasses, kind of tall, smiling, and trying to give candy or something to a kid. To really hit the message home, they gave him tentacles for legs. It was pretty silly, but whatever. 2 days later, I remember going home from school. Right before I go past this small park, I get this immense feeling of dread, as if I know something horrible is gonna happen. Senses hyper-aware, heart beating fast. I remember some older kids laughing at me for walking so fast, but I just wanted to go home as soon as possible. Right before I get home, there's a road that I need to cross, and as I turn the corner, I see a gray car. And I swear to God, out comes a tall man with glasses and black hair, smiles at me and tells me to get in the car. Nope.jpg, bolt home as fast as my legs could take me. Don't even bother looking back. Slam the door of my home, shouting at my parents to let me in. Tell them the story. They immediately take me to the police. They were skeptical at first, but because I told the story in so much detail, they believed me. Never heard if they caught the guy.
One time I was somewhat sleepy, but otherwise in a normal state. I was thinking really deeply, but I don't remember what I was thinking about. I walked down to my basement, still lost in thought, but clear-headed. And as I passed through the would-be doorway, between the last stair and the basement, I distinctly remember feeling like I had been flung forward through time. I looked at the doorway and thought, what happened to the door here, even though there had never been a door there as far as I know. I looked in that general door area for probably 20 or 30 seconds, while my mind was clawing to find out who I was. You know when you can feel a dream you had, but not remember the exact details? Like that. I got the feeling that I was in the middle of a different life/timeline/mirror reality or whatever, and that I had transferred. I was desperately mentally searching for any hints that would remind me of who I was before now, but all I could find in the place of where my memories should be were the ones I have of this life. Then I got this really bad gut feeling that I had lost everything, which passed in 2 seconds, and I thought, oh well, and smiled and went on with my day. though I still think that maybe there are cracks in the formation that controls what we should and shouldn't be capable of experiencing. And I experienced something profound but ultimately meaningless.
Holy shit. Not forward, backward. You're right, there never was a door there. One will get installed eventually, though, far in the future. In the far future, you must somehow get transported back in time, to that very moment you walked through that doorway, only to realize all too late that traveling to any point in time simply merges your consciousness into the you that already exists in that time, as nature somehow finds a way to rebalance the homeostasis of the time displacement and eliminate any memories from the future. Time traveler, you from the future. His last thoughts, before getting absorbed into present you, were, wait a minute, where's that door? Wait, I'm in the past. Everything that happened since this, it's all gone. All of it? No, I can't even remember. What? No, try, your daughter, who? Oh, that was weird. Wonder what that was about. Oh well.
I once heard a weird blooping noise, like a cartoony water droplet noise, repeatedly after leaving a friend's house at like 3 a.m. Another friend was leaving at the same time too, and he remembers this happening as well. Since it didn't sound like real water dripping somewhere, we tried finding the source for several minutes, because what the hell makes a noise like that? I tried checking the drain pipe, my car, and I walked by a few other houses to see if it got louder or quieter. The really messed up thing about it was that it always sounded like it was maybe 15 to 20 feet away, despite us going up and down the street, even walking to a nearby park when we noticed it seemed like the noise was around us. Not once did we find anything that could possibly be making this noise that was somehow following us. No other people were out. No animals, no vehicles, no drones, no water sources nearby besides sewers, but we could still hear the noise in the park. Basically, this weird noise stayed with us for about 20 minutes of walking up and down the street and going to a park to then going back to my car after giving up. We kept hearing it until we actually left my friend's house. The noise itself wasn't really scary, but it's certainly one of the stranger things in my life.
Begin a new job working in jail, night shift. Not the best work, but it's honest work. Keep inmates alive and inside the building. Easy. One night, dream about this strange land. Everything is dead or looks dead. See a strange light, though, underneath a gnarled, desert-looking tree. Go over, and it takes a rough, feminine shape. I hear her voice, can't make out her name, but her name comes to me in some form. Skin and hair made of ice and snow. Feel warm and comforted by her presence. For months, feel her presence during waking hours. Keeps me company throughout the time working in jail and keeps close when I sleep. Joins me in a few dreams that usually had some significant meaning to them. Over time, adopting a more human-like appearance in dreams for better connectivity. One morning after a long shift where inmates got pretty rowdy, feel her more intensely. Dream of being trapped in a dilapidated castle, a constant threat from those who reside there. She's there too, looks really worried. Find a message in the dream. I needed to leave or I'd be killed. She's very worried. Work long enough to set up a new place of employment and leave the jail job. Hear about a nasty accident at the jail a few days later. A big inmate fight that resulted in injured officers and inmates alike. Dodged a bullet there. One last dream of her, happy and pleased with me. Haven't seen, felt, or heard from her since. I don't know if it was a guardian angel, a spirit, a demon, or what, but I won't forget her. I just wish I could contact her again.
Probably going on pick-attached ride at the fair without being buckled in properly. I was in my seat and saw a guy going around buckling and checking everyone. They do this for all rides at the fair, so I thought, okay, hell, buckle me in and check. Which is the reason I didn't buckle myself, because I thought he'll just do it for me. I'll leave it till then. Then I noticed he goes away, and I yell out, wait, I'm not buckled in. And then the ride starts, and it's too late. He just walks off after checking nearly everyone else, and doesn't check me. There was another guy or two going around checking people, I think, though. So now it's too late to buckle myself in like I should have done, and not be a dumbass. And now it's too late to hop off, because the ride started. So now I'm in the air on a ride without being buckled in, and I'm holding on to the lines that hold the seat and swing you around with my hands, and I'm almost falling out. I was yelling the whole time, "Stop the ride! I'm not in properly! Stop the ride!" And it felt like forever. Felt like I was gonna fall out of the seat entire time, and I was basically holding myself up with my arms. Only thing that stopped me from falling out and launching out.
I didn't see this myself, but I had to calm down a few friends after they experienced a group hallucination. Be me, a bored guy out in the country, drive to a buddy's cabin to hang out. The cabin is deep in the trees, drive up a shit road and knock on the cabin. Hear panicked screams from inside, get confused and say, guys, it's just me, Anon, is everything all right?" One of them loudly runs to the door, reefs it open, yanks me inside with frightening force, and then slams the door shut. My buddy immediately starts rattling off questions like, "Did you see them? Are they still out there?" I immediately notice that he is sweating buckets and his eyes are more pupil than iris. I ask what he's on and he tells me shrooms. I roll my eyes and ask what he saw. He tells me, "The four of us were outside chilling and these figures the size of the trees started coming out of the woods on all sides. They looked like cloaked men with white masks." He sounded pretty unhinged, so I told him that I didn't see anything like that, and then asked where the others were. He tells me everyone ran to a different room to hide, so I went room to round up the other three. For fun, I decided to ask each one separately what they saw. Each friend describes the exact same thing, almost word for word. I get them all in one room so I can effectively trip sit, and once they calm down, they're all fairly calm for the rest of the trip, but refuse to go outside. I know that the explanation for this should just be that they were high, but each one saw the same thing and all four never freaked out like that on any other trip before or after this experience. Plus, they described the experience as one of them looking at the trees, asking the other three, "Can you guys see that?" The other three looked at the trees, all saw the same shit, screamed and ran inside.
In my life, I've had many strange and bizarre encounters, but this one stands out above all the others. Where I lived during my childhood, there was a house with strange architecture, 5 floors on one side and 6 on the other, 3 entrances on one side and 2 on the other. Needless to say, the inside of the building was complex too. I don't know why it was so unnecessarily complicated. The main entrance was blocked, and the dorms behind it were all closed and uninhabited. To enter the building from this side, you'd have to go through the roof, because otherwise, there was no way in from the outside, and the roof was almost always closed, secured with a heavy lock. My friends and I frequently hung out in the yard in front of the house, and one time, one of my friends pointed out a strange face painted on the wall. It could be seen from the outside through the windows that went up from the entrance, so you could kind of see inside when looking in. It was dusty, but on the second staircase, above the platform, the strange, evil face was painted. It looked like a dog from Tom and Jerry, but with a human-like facial expression, one of utmost malevolence. Its tongue was peeking out, its ears were pointed forward, and its eyes were shut. We didn't pay attention to it at the time and just went about our business. But the same day, I walked home alone, and for some strange reason, I decided to check the window again, to see the face. Although this part of the building was closed, there was still light coming from the other side. I realized that there was nothing on the wall but a smooth surface. I looked at the spot where the face had been for about a minute when I realized that something was very wrong, and I bolted out of there and ran home without looking back once, covering what was usually a 10-minute walk in 3 minutes. I still don't know what it was.
Lived in my truck in various national forests and parks across the western U.S. for 3 years or so. Favorite spot was in the Olympic Peninsula, in a national forest bordering the national park, which was a mix of second growth bordering old growth rainforest. I found an old dead-end logging road on the side of a 1,000-foot or so drop-off and set up camp, and it was fantastic. Could see the sun setting over the ocean in the distance, lots of wildlife, deer, elk, mountain goats, every type of bird. After a few months, I even got various mushrooms to forage. Only ever saw one hunter truck every other week, very isolated and particularly quiet. Probably the quietest place I've ever been, So far away from airlines and trains and highways, all you hear is wildlife and the wind. No surprise that it gets spooky in the woods at night that far away from anyone. Your mind plays tricks on you, sure, but hearing a bear stomp around breaking branches will definitely send a shiver down your spine at midnight. But I locked my doors so I was safe behind glass and steel. Over the months, I'd heard bears aplenty, and had even been through a real scare when a mountain lion screamed in the night sounding like a murdered woman. But one night was different. At around 2 a.m. I was awakened to the most god-awful, unholy shriek you could believe. It came from the direction of the 1,000-foot drop but sounded maybe 50 feet away. I bolted up in my car and clutched my flashlight and Bowie knife and just waited. And then it happened again, even closer. I almost pissed myself and tried to think of what to do. To get to my cab, I had to go outside and there was no chance of that, so no escape. I just had to sit there and wait it out. And after several sleepless hours, the safety of morning arrived. I GTFO and didn't go back, but in the time since, I've tried to figure out what kind of animal it could be. I've only found one match on YouTube.
Yesterday I was drinking coffee with my dog, and after finishing it, I checked on my mum to see what she was doing. After like a 5-minute convo, I entered my home office and started preparing for work. For some reason I remembered that I wanted to check out /x/ and I stumbled on that thread about that UK TV channel being hacked by some intergalactic force. The OP posted the video as well, and I kinda just skipped through it since it wasn't interesting, especially because I couldn't understand the words coming from the broadcast due to the recreated radio white noise. Now comes the interesting part. For some reason, I took off my headphones, and after a few seconds, I noted a similar radio frequency noise inside my brain. It sounded more like soda water fizzing, but I was still freaked out because I couldn't discern whether the noise was external or internal. After seconds, I realized that I'm not hallucinating or anything, and that I actually feel and hear something resonating inside my head. It felt like a specific point in the middle of my head, maybe leaning back a bit. I was worried about what was happening, but I shrugged it off since nothing negative was happening. For a minute. What happened next felt like a bad trip. My hands and feet started feeling cold, and I felt pressure inside my head. I turned up the heat, but I still felt cold in those parts, and I noticed that my hands were sweating. Suddenly, I felt like going to the bathroom, and soon after, I got nauseous. Now all of this is happening in a very short time span, and by the time I got to the bathroom, I felt very disoriented, like I just smoked weed, and it hit me too much. I also got very sleepy, so after finishing everything, I went to my bed to sleep. It was like 5 p.m., and I finished my coffee like 15-30 minutes earlier. Now, the week was really heavy on me in terms of work and stress. Average sleeping time was also around 6, and I felt really tired but never took a day off to properly rest and have a good night of sleep. You also might be interested in my mental illness history, but it's just depression and anxiety with panic attacks. Back to the story. I laid in my bed and tried to sleep, but I felt too strange to relax. As I already said, I felt like I just took something because I really felt like I'm tripping. I noticed that my heart was pounding really fast, with the additional and new feeling of hotness around my heart as it was wrapped by some heated piece of half-melted metal. My brain wasn't doing any better since I felt something that reminds me of the after effects of a bad headache. Like you had one a few hours ago and feel fine now, but can still feel the tightness and pressure. It was overall strange, since my heart was beating fast constantly, but my brain experienced some sorts of heat waves and pressure periodically. The worst thing about the entire ordeal is my mental state, because I seriously considered the chance that I'm having a psychotic attack or that I'm turning schizo. I felt like I was on acid and I was just about to hallucinate any moment now. I also felt like consciously controlling my environment in some sense in order to protect myself from a bad trip, just like I do on acid. Like every external noise made me paranoid, and I kept making sure that it was real and not something that my mind is making up or distorting. Now, after suffering for like an hour or so, I couldn't fall asleep any longer, and going through the experience was not an option. I really needed something to calm my mind, since I felt like I was going crazy. My mom entered the room to check on me, and I started telling her about what happened and that I felt sick. Turns out that I started having a small fever, and I applied the usual remedies and medicine. Mum didn't want to give me any benzo since she thought that I just got scared and that it caused a mild panic attack. I felt better over the next few hours, but I still couldn't sleep despite feeling extreme tiredness and fatigue. I'm not gonna lie, I felt like a grandpa who is spending his last night and is about to die in his sleep. My eyelids felt heavier than ever, but I couldn't fall asleep no matter what. I don't know why, but I constantly had the feeling of, if I close my eyes and fall asleep, I'm not waking up. By around 2 a.m., I finally started sleeping and woke up at like 11 a.m. I felt like I hadn't slept at all since I still felt tired, but at least there was no panic any longer. My appetite was completely gone, and I just drank tea and water all day. Made myself a coffee, thinking it was going to wake me up, but it just made me go panic mode again. The feeling of going crazy schizo mildly started appearing again, but I calmed myself down after an hour. I've regained my appetite after a few hours, and I finally feel somewhat normal now. But man, I just couldn't believe that all of this started happening all so sudden and fast. I'm well aware that my depression might have gotten the better of me and that I may develop some worse mental illness if I don't completely change my lifestyle for the next few years, but the actual fear of it happening right now without any earning made me value my sanity more than ever. Definitely don't want to go through this again.
This thread reminded me of something hilarious. B11, 12, hanging out with a friend. Have a laser pointer. 10 p.m. Time to go be scoundrels in the suburbs. Walk to a nearby church. Notice there's some guys doing electrical work or something. Go behind the church into a big vacant field. The church is surrounded by a stone wall. Perfect hiding place. Point laser under their van. Guys start to look around, collective, and they go back inside. Shine laser again. Look around more fervently, almost nervous. Friend lets out a god-awful screech. Basically him yelling in his highest pitch because our balls hadn't dropped yet. They look around even more nervously, go back inside, rinse and repeat for about 15 minutes. Friend sees a cop car pull into the church parking lot. I see a car pull into the parking lot. See fat electricians going to talk to the guy in the car. Not knowing it's a cop, I shine my laser into his back window. Friend says, "Oh shit," and just runs through the field. We both ran to the back of the field. See cop shining his bright flashlight against the wall that we were previously hiding behind. He turns his flashlight off. I shine the laser at the wall one last time just so the cop, who I didn't realize was a cop, would see. We make our escape into dark suburbia. 10 out of 10 hijinks would unironically still commit as an adult.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.